Right, what is your ugly point here, Maniac? By the way, Maniac, what I love here is he also has some like very predictable angles, but you can see where it's going to go. So what is your ugly point, Maniac?
All right, for this one, I'm gonna just preface it. We're not getting analytical. We're getting romantical / tragic. That's the angle we're going for. And today's movie is gonna be shox's 2022 as a freaking meteorite downfall. Oh my god! Did I not see that coming? Once he got removed from Vitality in 2021. Like, I have to say, I had heavy doubts about the fruitful move to Liquid, and very early on I got confirmed that the doubts that I had, that it wouldn't exactly work the way they intended it to work, there would be rolled overlap and whatever, but I had actually no idea how deep this would go, and he that has to be one of the greatest downgrade in terms of players' credit in a span of 12 months. I struggle to find any other players that had some sort of, I mean, I could, but this would be way more tragic, of course. He went from people actually questioning the fundamental change of Vitality when they had this relatively great run at the end of 2021, where people were actually saying, "Oh my God, why are they actually changing? Like, this is working well. We know maybe it's just Kyojin. You know, shox is still doing his work. He's got some clutches. He's got some great games here and there." To this is not going well in Liquid, to Apex now put the entire roster on hold and shox is free to explore his option. And his credit, like his score, has just gone down the drain to the point where I don't believe any European team is going to go and try to get shox above, say, the top 20. I'd be surprised. So now if he still has the grit, still has the motivation, he can maybe go back to the French scene and try and build something up. I don't know if he would. That's beyond the purview of this moment here, but what a downfall it has been. And for a player that, I mean, for the newest viewer out there, you guys might not be too privy or aware of who shox is, but we talk about someone that was one of the best players in the world in CSGO for the first few years, one of the best players in the world in CS Source, has put his name in the game without any shadow of a doubt, was one of the most influential players we've had, and just completely, absolutely crashed and burned in 2022. So that's my ugly.
Thoughts, Maui? You were always down on the shox move to Liquid, right?
I don't think I loved it ever, but because I at some points I kind of wish that they just got some hexed type player, kept it American, but that's for like personal reasons. You know, there's obviously a lot of bias in that. I guess I did like some of the veteran savvy that he brought, and even Liquid themselves said that he was helping them iron out some of their like key game philosophies and like building out decision trees for them. And so what I always kind of said is that, or as soon as I started hearing that and started seeing the performances that shox was putting into the server for Liquid, I actually think I probably said a handful of months ago that maybe even on this podcast that I think shox would be a sick coach. No, I think I said it on a desk. That I think everything that they were saying about shox was like, he sounds like a great mind for the game, a great asset in terms of discussions and server time, but he's not actually putting in what he needs to as an individual player. And so to see him fall apart on Apex, I mean, that Apex roster, to be fair, I also like rated them pretty low for a long time. Like when I made a prediction about them at the beginning of this year with Richard on another podcast, I said I don't think they're going to be in the top 30 really at all, and they really weren't. They barely scraped through, like they barely touched top 30 if they did. And so I thought that project was kind of doomed for a long time. But I guess the thing with shox is that actually, to reminisce a bit, I mean, he was one of the people back in like 2013 that were making moves and pushing the game's engine to its limit in terms of what you can do mechanically, like running up mid on Dust 2 with an op. And then it's like, now you see people like Surson sometimes do that when they're really feeling themselves. And it's like, shox was doing this in the beginning because he had such a great mechanical understanding of how to play CSGO that it was actually, he was one of the people that made the game exciting very early on. And now to see this fall from grace is incredibly disappointing, but unfortunately somewhat predictable based off of where he was 12 months ago.
Right, okay. I agree with Maniac. The angle here is like, it's Greek tragedy, isn't it? Shakespearean almost at this point in time. We're not just doing the game analytics and the numbers and he hasn't done quite as well when he played this rotator spot here. Like, we're not doing all that shit, right? So first of all, think about what an iniquity this would be for shox if you told him 10 years ago that in 2022, he ends up getting cut by 2 Apex in 1 year. Listen, I ain't been on the desk for a while, Maniac. Got to save the fucking gems every now and then. That was for you, mate.
That's a good one.
That would have been one of those ones I do on the... by the way, if you don't know, I never give anyone warning when I drop that shit. They just fucking... They have to just live with it and react in the moment. So there's a good one. Also, just not least because shox and Apex didn't really get along for many years, so that would be the ultimate iniquity also to be cut by to Apex. And then the other angle is, I also do think shox's career, like, here's the difference. Kenny S's is tragic because Kenny S, I mean, he would just tell you straight up, I just didn't have motivation. Yeah, I just didn't, like, I was burned out on the game. I didn't love it as much anymore. I could only basically be in, like, the number one team, and if I wasn't, then I wasn't going to, like, that's tragedy in the sense of, like, oh, shame he didn't have the same passion for the game, or he didn't have, like, a work ethic, or he wanted to do other things in his life. The shox one is really tragic because I actually think he's an example of a player, right? I'll contrast it with certain other players. I am so impressed when someone like Rain can be the best player on FaZe in years past and then be just a supportive element, just be in theory like one of the worst players on paper and take all the shit roles. The one that I always think is the craziest of all time has to be Neo and Taz in CSGO. These guys were the players in CS 1.6. I mean, Neo was the god player. The joke was he used to do before what Simple didn't see it. He used to do that shit where on CT you just tell people, I'm just going to take your spot this round because they're coming to your area and I'm Neo. And he'd just do it and kill the whole team and win the round, right? When you're those players, if you can age gracefully by taking up the supportive roles and make another guy the star, you have like, you go beyond legendary to me. That's where like you can extend your career and you can. shox, unfortunately, to me, has never done that. Like, if people don't know, I remember doing a scrapbook episode with Malek where I actually sort of like, because I knew these stories behind the scenes, I have to like tease them out because there's only so much you can say on camera. And he basically admits, but not in as many words, that part of how he was able to get shox on side when he was the G2 coach was he sort of had to like half trick shox that he's still part of the IGL makeup. Like, you know, you call pistols, Richard, and then like on certain CT spots, you know, you can like decide what setup we're going to do. Like, that's just like what they did to MBK and OG. That's like, look, I know you actually secretly want to be the in-game leader, or at least like the main secondary caller. I'm not going to let you do that, but I'm going to basically make it sound like I'm letting you do that and negotiate until at the end of the negotiation, actually, we're almost at what my position was anyway, but I made it sound like I met you in the middle. Like, the real reason why that's an issue for me is because it looked to me like that's what they had to do in Vitality when he came in the team, and they were like, look, you're on certain T sides, you have a bit of room here, and it's like, oh yeah, and you're still like winning the clutches, so you can come in last on certain rounds. And then later, when they came to the Team Liquid one, I don't know what Maniac's heard, but I'd heard things like that in Liquid. Like, he doesn't like his role, he's not happy with it, and he doesn't like vibe with the team and stuff. So my problem is this: of all the players in the history of CSGO who were true superstars, like contender for best player ever, this is a player who, I think this will happen to Simple one day. Those players, I don't think can just be part of the team, just be a guy like setting someone else up. Like, I think on some level, because they were so good and they were so incredible, they almost have to be played around. They have to be a star. They have to have the say in what happens. And shox has just shown that once his game no longer could like dominate inside the server, he wants to dominate ideologically what the team does, how they play, how he plays, etc. Now, that could be maybe to make it fun for him, to make it so he's still into the game. Maybe he really fundamentally disagrees with how people play CS. But the problem is, I think it's made actually his role in these last few teams a bit inappropriate, and it hasn't worked for those reasons alone. I don't think it's skill. Like, I think if we could sort of like wipe shox's brain and input a new personality, the hands are there. I guarantee he could still be a decent player. Like, to me, what really shows that people are fanboys is when people tell me that like Forest could still be on a top team, but like shox can't be. Like, why the fuck not? Like, they both got hands still, boys. They're both legendary players. The point is, what team and what role are we playing? Because, by the way, on the Forest one, I did this point on my show with Paladin. That point gets way less sexy when you realise. The question is, could Forest be on a top team and make them better? Or are you just making a vanity project to make Forest really good? Like, yeah, if you put Forest on FaZe, he's going to look great. FaZe isn't going to look as good. So I don't know what the point in the move is. You're just doing a favour to Forest. So if we're talking about just a top 10 or a top 15 team, both these guys could be on a team. But the point is, they're not going to be the man. They're not going to be played around. And they're going to have to basically like eat a bit of humble pie in order to be on that top team. And unfortunately for me, a lot of it's like knowing things about his personality. Some of it's just looking at the dynamics of the team and things I've heard from coaches. By the way, coaches are where you get all the info if you want to know the scene. That I just don't think he's ever had the mentality, the mindset to fit these teams. Even though, by the way, I'll tell you one thing I'll say for him, unlike some of the other people who are in that spot, he is really good at interviews, though. He knows how to say the right things in the interview and sound like he's going to do that. And, oh, I don't need to be the leader. It's like, on some fundamental level, he does, in my opinion. Just my take. Any follow up on that? Which go to the next?
That's a fair statement. Just quickly, I think you nailed it when what was needed for shox is shift of perspective and how he saw himself in the next project. And I think he had the key to go on for years and years and years. Would he have kind of accepted to be that fourth rifle, that like supportive, reliable element with a wealth of experience that can just clutch, and that's it? And I thought in that role, if he made that shift, he could go on for as long as he wanted. because of how exceptional he is as an individual. But if his kind of value or his goal is to still be as impactful as he was in the past, then yes, of course, the differential is going to be way too hard to live through, and he's just going to crash, which is, I think, what happened. And that's a bit of a shame, bro. Yeah, I think you're right on that.
I think. Okay, wait. What's the truth, or is there anything behind that French Last Dance? Is that actually happening?
That was just a joke.
idea.
I think that was just
a
Pimp.
joke.
I assume it was Pimp just making like a fake Last Dance. I didn't see any news.
Okay.
I didn't hear anything about it.
I mean, for a start off, it has existence in there. Who, by the way, Mouse hasn't played CSGO in years and was off in
he
Valorant
cannot play
recently.
right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think that's. I think that was just him doing like if I made like a Polish lineup of like Snacks comes back or whatever, I think that was just a joke.
Sure. Okay, well then never mind. We don't have to talk about it. Pimp
No, it's all good.
Making tweets.
Listen, it's what Pimp does. It's what he does. Some of them land. Listen, it's a good conversation starter. It was a good conversation starter, yeah. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.